We're now 2 months away from the election that will likely decide the next leader of the nation's largest city. On June 22nd, New York City voters will cast their ballots in the Democratic and Republican mayoral primaries. The candidate who emerges on the Democratic side is expected to replace the term-limited Bill de Blasio. There hasn't been a lot of polling on the race, but so far, the candidate consistently leading is the one with the biggest national brand. That would be former presidential candidate Andrew Yang. He dropped out of that race after the New Hampshire primary without earning a single delegate. But his platform appears to be working for him now. The latest polling from earlier this month shows Yang leading by about 9 points on the first round of voting. Now, the state has adopted a new ranked choice voting system, which our next guest can help explain. I want to bring in New York Times reporter Jeffery Mays. He covers city politics for the Times Metro desk. Jeffrey, thank you so much for being here with us. I want to start with Andrew Yang's lead. Is this just a product of his name recognition, or does he actually have enough support and money to win?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. If I had the answer to that, I'd probably be a very rich man consulting for lots of campaigns. But I think the thought right now is that, although the election is 2 months away, there's still time. Mr. Yang has polled anywhere from 22 to 25% in the polls, but there have also been a big portion of undecided. So a lot of the candidates believe that there's a lot of room there to challenge that position. There's a lot of room for them to grow. But right now, he is definitely the presumptive front runner in this race.
So in addition to Yang, there are actually a lot of candidates in this race. Can you help us understand where the top campaigns line up, and how does this new ranked choice voting system actually work, and how will it impact the race?
Well, I think there are several interesting candidates. Polling frequently behind Mr. Yang has been Eric Adams. He is the borough president of Brooklyn, a former police officer, former police reformer. So he's consistently been right behind Yang. And then you have Scott Stringer, who's also the city controller. He's been in city politics for decades, has been the controller for the last 8 years. Is making the argument that he understands the city budget and finances. There's also Maya Wiley, who was a former counsel to Mayor Bill de Blasio, the current mayor, and also a civil rights attorney. She is coming up and addressing a lot of issues around police reform. And other candidates that are to be observed are Ray McGuire. He's a former executive at Citi. He's making the argument that because of the situation the city's in, the pandemic, that he has the financial skills to help bring the city back.
And Jeffrey, you have some really interesting reporting on the flood of outside money coming in. And something I didn't realize until I read your piece was that this is the first time that super PACs are involved. So how have things changed, and who do you think is seeing the most benefit with this?
Yeah, this is the first time we're seeing super PACs that are supporting individual campaigns. And so far, they've garnered millions of dollars. They are mostly using that money to purchase ads. So we've seen Sean Donovan, who is another top-tier candidate. He's a former federal housing secretary under President Obama, also worked under former Mayor Bloomberg. There's a PAC that is supporting him that has raised at least $3 million. Most of that money has come from his father, who's put the money into that PAC. And the Campaign Finance Board has raised some issues about that spending. Also, Ray McGuire, the former Wall Street businessman, he also has a PAC that has raised about $4 million. And they, too, have been using most of that money to buy television ads. And in addition to those two, we're seeing maybe a possible small PAC for Scott Stringer, who's the city controller. And Mr. Yang is also supposed to be the beneficiary of at least 2 PACs coming forward. So I believe what we're going to see as we get towards the end of this race is a deluge of advertising, television ads, radio ads that are going to be financed by the super PAC.
All right, so New Yorkers should prepare to see lots of ads on their televisions, I guess. Speaking of Ray McGuire, the Citigroup executive, the former Citigroup executive, you did a profile of him, and you wrote about how he's trying to prove that he's more than just a Wall Street candidate. What did you learn?
Well, you know, he makes this argument because he has this interesting history where he grew up, you know, poor in Ohio, raised by a single mother, and his grandparents lived with foster siblings, but, you know, ended up going to private school, ended up going to Harvard, getting 3 degrees. It became one of the longest serving and highest ranking executives on Wall Street. So his argument, too, is that in the midst of this pandemic, New York City has seen financial difficulties, and, you know, we're about to get $6 billion in federal aid. He is the best person who has the management experience to help lead the city. You know, it's similar to an argument that former Mayor Bloomberg made after the September 11th terror attacks, that given his experience running his business, he could help lead the city back. So far, Mr. McGuire has remained middling in the polls, but this past week he got a big endorsement from a congressman out in Queens, and he's been out in the street talking to people, trying to increase his name recognition. And in combination with those ads, he's hoping that, you know, his numbers, his showing will move up in the polls.
Wow. Well, a lot of different kinds of candidates to watch in this race. Jeffrey, thank you so much for your reporting and for helping us learn more about what's going on in New York City. We'll keep an eye on it.
Thanks for having me.